A 67-year-old woman stands behind a cash register at Target, scanning items for 8 hours straight. Her feet hurt. Her back aches. 25 years ago, she was a corporate accountant, pulling in $85,000 a year. She had a company pension waiting for her. Fast forward to today, and she's earning $15 an hour because her retirement savings sit at $18,000, and her Social Security check of $1,700 barely covers her rent, after healthcare costs eat half of it. This isn't some isolated tragedy. This is statistical reality. The Federal Reserve data shows us that 43% of Americans between 55 and 64 have absolutely zero retirement savings. Nothing. And for those who manage to save something, the median sits at just $22,000. Run that through the standard 4% withdrawal rule, and you're looking at $73 per month. Combined with Social Security and after medical expenses, you're trying to survive on roughly $2,200 monthly in a country where studio apartments cost more than that in most metro areas. Here's what I'm going to walk you through. The boomer generation didn't blow their retirement because they were financially irresponsible or made stupid choices. They got crushed because they became unwilling test subjects in the greatest financial experiment in American history. A shift from guaranteed benefits to individualized risk that nobody asked for and nobody understood. We're talking about systematic policy changes, corporate wealth extraction, 2 catastrophic market collapses timed precisely to obliterate wealth at the moment people needed it most, and a retirement infrastructure that was literally being built in real time as they tried to use it. This is about incentive structures. This is about what happens when you're the experimental generation for something called self-directed retirement. Let me give you the framework we're working with here. Think of retirement planning like a video game. You start playing with one rule set. Then midway through, developers patch the game and change core mechanics. You adapt, you learn the new system. Then right as you're about to beat the final level, they shut down the servers and reset your progress. Twice. That's the boomer retirement story in one metaphor. And if you're sitting there thinking you're safe because you're younger and more financially literate, I have uncomfortable news. You're playing the exact same game. The servers just haven't crashed on you yet. Let's rewind to when this game first launched. Retirement as a societal concept is younger than television. For the overwhelming majority of human existence, you worked until your body gave out. That was the deal. The first corporate pension appeared in 1875 when American Express, still operating as a shipping company, told their senior managers, "Give us 2 decades of loyalty and we'll pay you half your salary at age 60. Notice the target audience, management tier, not the factory floor. Mass retirement didn't become a thing until 1935, when Franklin Roosevelt signed Social Security into existence. We're talking 90 years ago. The first actual Social Security payment went out in 1940. Boomers started being born in 1946. They showed up exactly 11 years after the retirement system was invented. Their parents were literally the first generation in human history to retire. Company pension, government Social Security, gold watch ceremony at 65. Game over. That was the playbook boomers watched growing up. Put in your years, stay loyal to one employer, retire with dignity. Clean, simple, secure. Except by the time boomers started entering the job market in the mid-1960s, that playbook was already being shredded, and nobody gave them the memo. Decades of promised benefits just evaporated. That was America's first collective realization that the promise could be broken. And corporations noticed something crucial. Pensions were hemorrhaging money. What if there was a cheaper alternative? This is where the incentive architecture becomes visible. Corporations don't exist to secure your comfortable retirement. They exist to maximize shareholder returns. Pensions are a massive liability on balance sheets. Every year, companies have to fund them, manage them, hire actuaries. If markets crash or people live longer than projected, the company absorbs the loss. So corporate America started hunting for an exit strategy. They found it in 1978, buried in Tax Code Section 401, subsection K. Originally designed to let executives defer bonus taxation, a benefits consultant named Ted Benna realized it could be expanded to everyone. Here's the brilliance of the 401k from a corporate finance perspective. It transfers all risk from employer to employee. You fund it, you manage it, you select the investments. If everything collapses, that's your problem. The company contributes a small match and calls it generous compensation. By the mid-1980s, traditional pensions were dying rapidly, replaced by 401k plans. The game board had been completely replaced. Boomers were now in their 30s and 40s, and the retirement infrastructure they expected to use had disappeared. But even if they'd immediately understood these new rules, there's a catastrophic problem. The stock market from 1966 to 1982 went absolutely nowhere. 16 years of stagnation. If you put $1,000 into the market in 1966 and held until 1982, after accounting for inflation, you'd have roughly $500. You lost half your capital following the exact advice we give today: buy and hold for the long term. Imagine you're 20 years old. Everyone older than you distrusts the stock market because they lived through the Great Depression. You decide to be smart and invest anyway. For 16 years, you watch your money slowly disintegrate. In 1979, Businessweek published a cover story, The Death of Equities. The argument was straightforward. Stocks are finished as an investment vehicle. For an entire generation, that was their introduction to investing. Not a wealth creation tool, but a scam. That impression shaped everything afterward. Because unlike younger generations who've only witnessed markets climbing throughout our adult lives, boomers experienced stagnation first. They learned distrust. By the time markets finally turned around in 1982, the oldest boomers were 36. They'd already missed the most powerful wealth-building window, those early 20s when compound interest does exponential work. Invest $10,000 at 22 with 7% returns, and by 65, you'll have approximately $213,000. Start at 36 with identical contributions, and you'll end with $76,000. You forfeit $137,000 just by delaying 14 years. Boomers didn't delay by choice. They delayed because the market betrayed them first. That's the first breaking point. The rules changed and time was stolen. Then things get interesting. The 1980s and 1990s delivered the longest bull market in recorded history. From 1982 to 2000, the Dow climbed from 800 to 11,000. Suddenly, investing looked like printing money. CNBC launched. Mutual fund advertisements saturated media. Stories emerged about 401k millionaires, ordinary workers who maxed contributions from day one and rode the wave to seven figures. So boomers, now in their 40s and 50s, jumped in. Because they were behind schedule, they went aggressive. Technology stocks, growth plays, high-risk positions trying to catch up. By 2000, they finally believed. They trusted the system. They thought they'd cracked the code. The market always rises. Invest and wait. Then the board flipped. March 2000, the dot-com bubble exploded. The Nasdaq lost 78% over 2 years. The Dow dropped 38%. If you were 54 in 2000 with $300,000 in your 401k, you woke up with $186,000. $114,000 vanished. Not because of anything you did wrong, but because overvalued companies with no business models collapsed back to reality. To be fair, if you held through, markets recovered. By 2007, they returned to 2000 levels. But here's the cruel timing. Just as recovery completed, just as boomers felt secure again, the board flipped a second time. 2008, the Great Recession. Housing markets imploded, stock markets halved, unemployment hit 10%. The oldest boomers were 62 at retirement age. Their 401ks barely recovered from the last crash, got destroyed again. This time, they didn't have years to wait for recovery. They were out of time. Let me give you concrete numbers with a realistic example. Meet Susan. She's fictional, but her numbers track median data. Susan turned 22 in 1970. She got hired at a telecommunications company, starting at $28,000 annually. Solid middle-class income. She watched markets flatline for 16 years, so she didn't invest. In 1986, at 38, her employer eliminated pensions and switched to 401ks. Susan started contributing 6% of salary. Company matched 3%. By 2000, Susan was 52 with approximately $260,000 saved. Respectable. Then, dot-com hit. Her account dropped to $165,000. She panicked, but her advisor said, hold steady. By 2007, she'd climbed back to $275,000. Then, 2008 happened. Her account fell to $140,000. Susan was 60. She couldn't wait another decade for recovery. She needed that money now. She retired with $140,000, generating roughly $5,600 annually. Add Social Security, and she's surviving on about $29,000 yearly. That's poverty-level income for someone who worked 38 years and followed every rule. That's the second breaking point. Boomers finally trusted the system right before it betrayed them twice. There's a concept in finance called sequence of returns risk. The order you experience market returns matters more than average returns. If you hit terrible returns early in retirement while withdrawing funds, you're destroyed. Even if markets recover later, you've already liquidated shares at losses to cover living expenses, and you can't get them back. Boomers hit retirement during the worst possible sequence. 2 crashes in 8 years, precisely when they needed stability. And they couldn't just keep working. Many tried, but corporations don't hire 65-year-olds. Age discrimination exists, despite being technically illegal. If you're over 60, you're pushed out of professional roles into minimum wage service jobs. Walmart, Target, Home Depot. That's where boomers landed. Not by choice, but because nowhere else would employ them. Since 1985, the percentage of Americans over 65 still working has doubled from 10.8% to 20.2%. Not because they love working, because they're broke. Here's the uncomfortable reality. The same system that failed boomers is what we're all using. You have a 401k or IRA. You're investing in index funds. You're betting markets will rise for the next 30 years. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. Maybe we'll hit a stagnation decade. Maybe there'll be another crash when you turn 60. Nobody knows. The only difference between you and boomers is timing. They got unlucky. You haven't yet. Retirement is a bet. You're betting markets will cooperate, that you won't get catastrophically sick, that inflation won't devour your savings, that the government won't change rules again. It's not guaranteed. It's probability. And boomers lost. So here are 3 critical takeaways. First, stop assuming the system works just because it's currently working. The 401k is 46 years old, barely older than Generation X. We have 0 long-term data on whether it'll work for millennials or Gen Z. Rules change. Markets stagnate. Plan for that possibility. Don't just assume 3 decades of 7% returns. Second, diversify your retirement strategy beyond market investments. Real estate, business ownership, income-generating skills. The boomers doing okay right now are the ones who own property or built alternative income streams. The ones who went all in on 401ks are struggling. Distribute your risk. Third, don't postpone living until 65. This hits hardest. Boomers delayed gratification their entire lives. They saved, they sacrificed. Many never reached retirement, or reached it too old and sick to enjoy anything. Build wealth, absolutely. Invest, definitely. But remember, you could get hit by a bus at 50. Don't defer life for a retirement that might never come. The boomer retirement crisis is a warning shot. The system doesn't care about you. It cares about efficiency and corporate profit. Your 401k is cheaper for your employer than a pension. That's why it exists. Markets don't care if you retire at the wrong moment. And the government doesn't care if Social Security is insufficient. They'll just raise the retirement age again. You're not immune. You're just earlier in the game. The board hasn't flipped yet, but it will. And when it does, you'll understand exactly how boomers feel right now.